The sky had darkened early that afternoon, staining the horizon a deep, bruised gray. The scent of damp earth hung heavy in the air, a sure sign that rain would soon fall upon the endless fields surrounding the village. It was there, amidst the infinite forests, that Bal, a ruler from a distant city, was on a diplomatic visit. He was young, yet as hardened as the soil beneath his boots. Since his father's death, he had learned to rely on no one. He bore a crushing weight of responsibility upon his shoulders, and his reputation was known throughout the region. A man of few words, a cold gaze, and an unpredictable temper. People respected him, yes, but they also feared him. Yet behind that shell of steel, Bal harbored an immense, hollow loneliness. Every night, he would stare out at the distant city lights. The echo of the silence followed him like an old ghost. Every single night, without fail. He had loved his mother, whom he lost as a child. He had loved his father, who perished sacrificing everything for him. He had even loved a woman, many years ago. But he had learned the bitter lesson that every time he allowed himself to love, he lost everything. And so, his heart had turned to stone. That afternoon, as the first drops of rain began to fall, Bal was returning on horseback from the southern edge of the village. He had ridden out alone, seeking a brief respite from the weight of his title. The wind whipped against his face, and the rumble of thunder echoed in the distance.
That was when he saw her, a solitary figure making her way along the rain-soaked track, pushing a small, weathered cart piled high and covered by a white cloth. The rain was coming down in earnest now, but she did not falter. She kept moving forward. As the rain slicked her blonde hair, it shimmered like gold against the charcoal sky. Bal pulled his horse to a halt, watching her with growing curiosity. What on earth is a woman doing out here in the middle of nowhere at this hour? He murmured to himself. He approached slowly. The young woman looked up, startled. Her eyes were a piercing turquoise, intense and vivid as a clear summer sky. "Good afternoon, sir," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't mean to disturb you. I'm just looking for somewhere to take cover." "There is no shelter on this road until you reach the village," he replied, his tone curt. "Where are you heading?" She pointed toward the village. "I sell homemade pastries. I live in a coastal hamlet, far from here. I was told I might find customers in the village. I didn't realize the rain would start so soon." Bal looked her up and down. Her simple clothes, her boots thick with mud, the sodden cart shivering under the downpour. Something about the scene stirred him, though he was loath to admit it. "Get on the horse," he commanded, his voice firm and devoid of warmth. "You won't get far, soaked to the bone as you are." "No, sir, I wouldn't want to be a burden." "I said, get on," he repeated, his expression hardening. She hesitated for a few heartbeats, but finally yielded. He dismounted and helped her up with careful precision. Then, securing the cart to his horse with a rope, Bal began to lead them toward the village, walking beside them through the driving rain.
The silence between them was broken only by the steady rhythm of rain striking the mud-slicked road and the rhythmic hoofbeats of the beast. Upon reaching the village, they sought refuge, slipping into the shelter of a nearby stable. "You can leave your cart here," he said, his voice devoid of warmth. "I'll take you to my estate. There is a fire inside and dry blankets." "Thank you, sir," she replied, trying in vain to wipe the mud from her skirt. "My name is Lydia," she added with a small, hopeful smile. "Bal," he replied, his tone curt and clipped, not even sparing her a glance. Lydia pressed on, though she sounded timid. "I have heard that name before. They say you are the youngest and most solemn ruler in the region. And the grumpiest, if the rumors are to be believed," he added, finally meeting her eyes. A faint half-smile tugged at the corner of his lips, a gesture that seemed to catch them both off guard. For a heartbeat, the tension in the air softened. Upon entering the estate, Lydia couldn't help but be struck by the grandeur of her surroundings. Ball walked toward the hearth and held out a thick wool blanket. "This will dry you faster." "Thank you, sir." Lydia looked at him with genuine gratitude. "I never imagined someone like you would help someone like me." "Someone like you?" he repeated, his brow furrowing slightly. "Because of your name and this place, I assume you are the renowned ruler of the great city, whereas I am just a pastry seller, barely scraping by to keep my home." Ball watched her in silence. There was something in her tone, a blend of humility and quiet strength, that felt strangely familiar. It stirred a memory of his mother, a woman of easy smiles and a noble heart. Though he had lost her when he was but a child, he would never forget the way she had looked at him. "It matters not what you possess. What truly carries weight is what you do with your own hands." Lydia lowered her gaze, deeply moved. "Then I hope my pastries are worth something." Ball let out a soft, genuine laugh, a rare sound for him. "Let me taste one, and we shall see." She opened one of the baskets she had salvaged from her cart and offered him a small pastry. Ball sampled it in silence. After a moment, he gave a slow, deliberate nod. "It has been years since I tasted anything quite this fine." Lydia beamed, and her smile seemed to illuminate the room more than the flickering firelight. Ball felt a sudden, rhythmic thrumming in his chest, a sensation he hadn't recognized in a very long time. "If you wish," she ventured, "I could visit until you return to your city. I must come to the village to sell my wares regardless." "Very well," he replied, masking his interest behind a practiced indifference.
But next time, do not travel alone in the rain. Lydia nodded softly. "I promise." Outside, the storm was beginning to wane, but within the walls of the estate, a different kind of tempest had just begun. As the girl gathered her belongings, Bilal found himself unable to tear his gaze away from her. He had known many women in his life, but they had all been drawn to his title, or worse, their own houses had been drawn to the political alliances his name could buy. None were like this peasant girl, who had emerged so suddenly from the storm. When she finally departed, guiding her weathered cart back toward the village market, Bilal remained in the great hall of his estate. He stood watching the dying embers of the hearth, his thoughts lingering entirely on her. He did not know it then, but that rainy afternoon had set his fate on a new path, changing his destiny forever. I am the Aethel-Ae. Every kingdom was also shaped by the loves history forgot. Let me tell you one of them. The story of the king fell in love with the girl who sold cakes in the rain. The sun climbed above the wheat fields, staining the sky in hues of burnished gold. In the village, the morning rhythm began early. Men were already saddling their horses. Women were preparing the morning meal, and the scent of damp earth mingled with the aroma of freshly baked bread. From the balcony of his chambers, Ball watched the sunrise with his customary gravity. Yet this morning, a different thought stirred within him. Unbidden, the memory of Lydia's turquoise eyes returned. The girl he had met in the rain a week prior. The image of her tangled golden hair haunted his thoughts, playing over and over in his mind. He had not seen her since, and the hour of his departure drew ever nearer. He tried to lose himself in his duties, burying his mind in endless meetings. But every time someone spoke, his thoughts drifted in the same direction. The narrow path that led toward the village. Will I see her again? He found himself wondering.
over and over in the quiet corners of his mind.
It was as if fate itself had heard his silent plea, for that very day his advisor knocked upon his door. "To Sarah Ball, a young woman insists upon seeing you. She has brought pastries, and she refuses to leave them behind. She claims you requested to receive them from her own hands." Upon hearing those words, Ball surged to his feet, a sudden, bright smile breaking across his face as he called out, "Do not let her leave!" Ball descended the stairs, and as he stepped into the great hall, he looked up to find her there. Lydia stood in the center of the room, clutching a basket in her hands, her gaze sweeping across the chamber, a simple kerchief tied over her hair. When she saw him enter, a shy smile touched her lips, and she raised a hand in greeting. "Greetings, Lord Ball," she said, her eyes bright. Ball did not answer immediately. He merely crossed his arms, feigning indifference, even as his heart hammered against his ribs. "I thought I said you were to visit when you came to the village," he replied, his tone stern. "I know," Lydia answered, her smile never faltering. "But my mother fell ill, and I could not return until today." Ball could no longer hold back. He smiled, though he tried his best to hide it. "You are as persuasive as a persistent kitten." "And you, my lord, are as grumpy as a thunderclap," she countered. The servants nearby exchanged startled glances. Not one of them had ever seen the young ruler speak so freely with anyone, let alone a woman. Lydia began laying out her pastries on the small low table in the center of the room. As she worked, she hummed a soft melody that filled the air with a tender, light-hearted joy. Ball watched her in silence, his gaze curious, his ears attuned to the music of her hum. There was something about this girl he could not quite name. It wasn't merely her beauty, it was the way she viewed the world, her inherent grace, the warmth with which she treated everyone she encountered. When she had set out the last of the pastries, Lydia reached for one that was slightly larger than the rest. "I brought you something special," she said, extending a small bundle wrapped in linen. "It is honey and cinnamon, the very first one I drew from the oven this morning." Ball took it, one eyebrow arched. "And why is this one special?" "Because I made it with you in mind." The utter sincerity in her voice disarmed him completely. Accustomed as he was to the icy posturing of politics and the hollow weight of empty words, Ball found himself at a loss. "Thank you," he said finally, his gaze locked onto hers. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stand still. Only the distant, living hum of the village outside and the hushed curiosity of the servants within dared to stir the silence. Days bled into weeks, and Lydia's visits to the estate became a fixture of his life. Every day she would arrive with her cart, overflowing with pastries, her hair pinned back, and a smile ready to brighten the hall. The servants soon came to await her arrival with genuine warmth, but the one who anticipated her visit most, though he would sooner die than admit it, was Ball. He found himself constantly concocting excuses to delay his departure, lingering on in a place where he no longer truly belonged. There was a quality to her presence that transformed everything. When Lydia was near, the very air seemed lighter. Ball found himself laughing for no reason at all, listening, captivated, as she wove tales of her quiet coastal hamlet, her eccentric customers, the trials of her mother's illness, and the small, hearth-warmed oven where she baked her bread at the first light of dawn. One afternoon, in the quiet of the estate's courtyard, Lydia was sharing the story of how she had learned her grandmother's secret recipe when a sudden, fierce gust of wind caught her, snatching the kerchief from her hair.
The cloth took flight, but Ball was quick, plucking it from the air before it could touch the muddy ground. "It seems the wind desires something of yours," he said, holding it out to her. Lydia took it, a flush of color rising to her cheeks as she offered him a mischievous glance. "The wind is a fickle thing, my lord, but you are a rogue. I believe you are far more devious than the wind." Ball let out a genuine laugh. He could not remember the last time anyone had dared to tease him so. But not everyone looked upon this growing closeness with favor.
One morning, Gothian, the ruler's most trusted advisor, approached him as they were reviewing the logistics for the journey back to the city. "With all due respect, Tessera, people are talking." Ball fixed him with a cold, piercing stare. "And what are they saying?" "They say the pastry girl has distracted you. They say it is unwise to let sentiment cloud your obligations." The ruler's jaw tightened. "My feelings are no one's business but my own." "They are, in fact, everyone's business. Your feelings are a matter of state. You are the Tessera of Lydianum, and every action you take is a concern for the realm. The people expect something more of a man in your position. Besides, there is no longer any reason for you to remain here. This journey has dragged on for far too long." Ball did not answer, but those words, sharp and stinging, lodged themselves deep within his mind. That night, as they sat down to dinner, the crackling of the hearth fire filling the silence, he turned his advisor's words over in his mind. And he knew it. The man was right. This was all a mistake. He tried to convince himself that he must create distance, that this entire connection was nothing more than an ill-suited illusion, and that the time had finally come to return home. But the following day, when he saw Lydia in his hall, every doubt vanished. "I brought something new today," she said, watching him with a bright smile. "Apple and cinnamon tart." "And how am I supposed to say no to that?" he replied, feigning indifference. Lydia met his gaze with that piercing, transparent look that seemed to see straight through him. "I didn't come just to sell, Ball," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "I came because I like being here." He watched her in silence. Her words completely disarmed him. For a moment, the crushing weight of his doubts simply evaporated. He stepped closer until he was standing face to face with her, so close that their breaths mingled, warm and soft in the air between them. "You shouldn't say such things," he murmured. "You have no idea what you stir within me." "I do," she replied, utterly unafraid. "But I have no wish to silence it." The air grew thick, heavy with the weight of unsaid things. Ball felt his heart hammering against his ribs. He opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat.
In that exact moment, a distant rumble of thunder rolled across the sky. It was as if nature itself were announcing that something was about to shift, fundamentally and forever. Lydia smiled, took a step back, and picked up her basket. "Until tomorrow, Tessera." She turned and left, leaving behind the echo of her laughter, the lingering scent of cinnamon, and a man who, for the first time in years, could not tell if he was trembling with fear or brimming with hope. Ball stood frozen, watching her go, knowing with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same.
Time had stretched thin. He had run out of excuses to remain, and he knew it. Ball was forced to a crossroads. He must choose between his heart or his duty. Ever since Lydia had wandered into his life, It was as if this fair-haired woman had struck a spark in a heart he had long believed extinguished. Yet, that very light unsettled him. He was unaccustomed to feeling, and far less used to needing anyone. But the grace period had ended. He could no longer outrun the inevitable choice before him. That morning, as he paced the village streets, he could not stop thinking of her. He remembered her laughter, the way her hands were perpetually dusted with flour, the quiet, persistent way she found goodness in even the bleakest of circumstances. And then, the stinging reminder of his advisor's words clawed at him again. People are talking, here and back in the city. As he made his way toward the town hall, he spotted a familiar figure at the far end of the lane. Lydia was heading for the market, her cart in hand, a basket slung over her shoulder, and her hair braided neatly away from her face. "Good morning, Tessera Ball," she called out, offering him that smile which seemed to melt the very frost from his heart. "Good morning," the young ruler replied. "Out selling again before the sun has even fully crested the horizon?"
"A happy customer isn't won by sleeping in," she quipped, her eyes dancing with amusement. "Besides, I promised you a new recipe. Lemon and honey tart," she added, her voice brimming with excitement. Ball arched a brow. "It seems you always have an excuse to return." "And it seems you always have an excuse to delay your journey home," she countered playfully. Ball stared at her, genuinely taken aback. No one ever spoke to him in such a way, least of all a commoner. Yet, far from being offended, he found her audacity utterly captivating. "You are bold," he said, stepping a fraction closer. "Not many dare to challenge me with such ease." "I am not challenging you, Tessera. I am merely speaking with sincerity." A flicker of that rare, guarded smile touched his lips. "Ball," he corrected, his voice dropping to a low, steady murmur. "Call me Ball." Lydia gazed at him, looking momentarily adrift. "I do not think that is appropriate. Even the wealthy and the powerful address you as Tessera." "I care little for what is appropriate," he countered, his tone quiet yet absolute. "I care only for what makes me feel alive." The silence that followed was so profound that even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Her eyes met his, and for a fleeting, suspended moment, the rest of the world simply ceased to exist. That afternoon, Lydia lingered in the village far longer than was her custom. There was a natural ease between them, a gravity that felt as though they had known one another for a lifetime. That afternoon, Lydia lingered in the village far longer than was her custom. There was a natural ease between them, a gravity that felt as though they had known one another for a lifetime.
"Were you always this industrious?" he asked, as they strolled among the market stalls. "For as long as I can remember," she replied, with a touch of pride. "My father died when I was but a child. My mother and I learned to survive on our own. The hearth we use now was his. Every pastry I bake is a way to remember him." Ball nodded slowly. He understood better than most what it meant to carry a legacy, even if the crushing weight of poverty was a burden he had never known. "Your father would be proud." Lydia offered him a grateful smile. "And yours?" she asked, her voice soft. Ball stopped, gazing into the distance,
deep in thought. He knew his father would never have prioritized love over convenience. There was no strategic advantage in a ruler falling for a common village girl. "My father was a hard man," Ball said finally. "He taught me never to trust, never to show weakness. He taught me to do what is necessary, not what is desired. But sometimes," he paused, his expression shifting, "sometimes I think he made me someone who forgot how to truly live." Lydia looked at him with profound tenderness. "I don't think you've forgotten, Ball. I think you were simply waiting for someone to remind you." Her words unraveled him. It was as if she had seen into the very depths of him, the part no one else dared to acknowledge. For a heartbeat, Ball felt the desperate urge to speak the truth his heart was screaming, but the words died in his throat. He could only look at her, a profound ache settling in his chest, knowing that his time had finally run out.
That night, as the village slept, Ball stepped onto the balcony with a glass of wine in hand. He watched the star-strewn sky, his thoughts drifting to Lydia, to the way her voice echoed in his mind, even in the stillness of the dark, to the ache of her absence the moment she departed. A shiver traced its way down his spine at the realization that within days he would be forced to leave, and perhaps he would never see her again. "What are you doing to me, Lydia?" he murmured, his voice caught between wonder and a rising, quiet fear. Back in her home, she found her own thoughts drifting toward him as well. As she kneaded the flour for the next day's bake, her mind kept returning to the face of the ruler, his stern gaze, his cool, clipped voice. She knew she was walking a dangerous path, yet she could not help herself. There was something in him that drew her in, past all reason. Her mother, watching her from the table, offered a knowing smile. "That man has stirred your heart, hasn't he?" Lydia felt her cheeks flush. "It is not what you think, Mother. He simply makes me feel different." "That is what they call love, my child," the woman said with a quiet, seasoned wisdom. "And love does not always stop to ask for permission before it enters." Rumors began to fester within the city. It had been far too long for a Tessera, the ruler of a great city, to be found lingering in a foreign village under the guise of negotiations. The village was no different. Whispers trailed them like shadows. The townsfolk murmured of the baker girl and the young monarch. More than a few men envied Ball his luck, while the local women viewed the pastry seller with disdain, whispering of her overreaching ambitions. One afternoon, as Lydia prepared to return to her hamlet, she was intercepted by a young man from Ball's court. He was a man who had long coveted the crown himself. With a sour gaze and a tongue dipped in poison, he spat at her. "Are you pleased with yourself, keeping a man here who should have departed long ago? What does this Tessera truly offer you, girl? Nothing but idle delusions. Or is it something more?" Lydia met his gaze with a flash of contained fury. "You have no right to speak to me of such things. I am merely speaking the truth. Men of his station use noble women for their own ends and discard them just as quickly. I shudder to think what they might do with someone of your low birth. Hear me well, girl. You are nothing more than a passing amusement to him." She turned and walked away without another word, though she fought to hold back tears as a jagged lump of hurt tightened in her throat. A short time later, when she arrived at the estate, Ball sensed the weight of her sorrow immediately. "What is wrong?" he asked, his voice etched with concern. "Nothing," she lied, though the word felt brittle. "I am simply tired." But he knew her far too well by now. He stepped closer, reaching out to tilt her chin upward with a gentle touch.
You have no gift for deception, Lydia. It is a talent you clearly do not possess. She lowered her gaze, unable to meet his eyes.
The people are talking, she whispered. They are saying terrible things.
Let them talk, he replied, his voice firm and unwavering. Let them say whatever they wish. I know who you are. Their eyes locked, and for the first time, Ball made no effort to temper the depth of his feelings. You are the only person who has ever managed to tear down my walls. I do not know how you did it, but I can no longer imagine a day without seeing you. Lydia felt her heart hammer against her ribs, and tears welled in her eyes, blurring his face.
Do not say that, she whispered, unless you truly mean it.
I feel it more deeply than I ever wished to, he whispered. And before she could breathe a response, he kissed her. It was a restrained kiss, yet it carried the crushing weight of emotions that had been dammed up for far too long. When they finally drew apart, they remained close, staring at one another, as if the very foundation of their world had shifted. Lydia trembled.
Ball, this is not right.
No, he agreed, his voice rough. It is not right. But he kissed her again anyway. Fearfully, she allowed the kiss, her fingers tracing the sharp, tense lines of his face. They parted once more, breathless. It may be wrong, he said, his voice straining with a vulnerability he had never dared show. But the greater wrong would be to keep pretending I feel nothing at all. Lydia took a staggering step back, her mind reeling. She was overwhelmed, drowning in the sudden gravity of the moment. I need time, she murmured. Then she turned and fled, the door slamming shut behind her. A sound that echoed deeper in Ball's heart than it did in the hall. Ball watched her go, a sharp, cold ache tightening in his chest. He knew he had crossed a line from which there was no returning. For the first time in his life, the hardest man in the realm had finally fallen in love.
Gothian! He roared, his eyes still shimmering with unshed tears. Prepare for our return to the city, at once! Gothian entered the chamber, his steps faltering as he stopped short, staring in bewilderment at his lord. Ball's eyes were brimming, yet as he met his advisor's gaze, the warmth vanished. The mask had slipped back into place. His expression was once again as cold and impenetrable as it had been before he had ever known Lydia.
A new day dawned in absolute silence. There was no peace to be found in Ball's heart, though several days had already passed since that ill-fated kiss. He had spent countless nights staring into the dark, unable to find rest. Lydia's kiss still burned in his mind like a fire he could not extinguish. He loathed himself for having crossed that line, yet he hated even more that he felt no true regret. Soon, none of it would matter. As the servants scrambled to ready the carriages below, he stood upon the balcony, casting one final look over the village. By nightfall, he would be gone. He would be returning to the city. I need time, she had told him. But time for what? To forget? Or to what end? The sharp creak of the door behind him shattered his thoughts. His advisor, Gothian, stepped into the room, his expression pulled tight with unspoken urgency. To Sarah, there is trouble. Ball moved toward him instantly. What is it? A rumor. I have heard talk concerning Lydia. It is on everyone's lips. Ball's features tightened, turning to stone. What are they saying? They say she has not returned to the market because her mother has fallen gravely ill. Have my horse readied,
I am leaving at once. To Sarah, Gothian said, stepping forward with cautious deliberation. I understand your desire to aid her, but you must be wary. Your name carries immense weight. If the people of the city suspect there is a bond between you, it could shatter your standing. It could cost you the crown. Ball fixed him with a frigid, unwavering stare. I care nothing for my reputation. I care for her. Gothian sighed, lowering his gaze in defeat. Then go. But tread carefully, my lord, and think well on the path you choose to walk.
As he galloped toward the village, one thought consumed him. I will not let fate take her from me. Not again. Each strike of his horse's hooves against the road sounded like an echo of his own desperation. He knew that if he did not arrive in time, he might lose her forever. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon when Ball finally reached the small village. Coated in dust and with his heart hammering against his ribs, he swung down from his mount. The breeze felt unnaturally warm. The sky stained a deep, burning crimson, as if the universe itself were writing the climax of their story in fire and promise. He reached Lydia's door and pounded upon the wood with urgent, heavy strikes.
Lydia, it's me!
The door creaked open slowly. She stood in the threshold, her face drawn, deep shadows beneath her eyes, her hands still stained with flour. She looked as though she had aged years in the span of mere days.
Ball, what are you doing here? They told me about your mother. I've come to help.
I do not need your coin, she said, her voice brittle and trembling.
I have already accepted far too much from you, even if I never asked for it.
I did not come to offer coin, he replied, his tone steady and calm. I came to offer myself. Lydia stared at him, bewildered. What are you saying? I am saying that I no longer wish for you to carry the weight of the world alone, he said, stepping closer. If you will have me, I will care for you. Your mother, your hearth, your dreams. Not out of pity, but because... Lydia searched his gaze, her breath hitching in her chest. Because I love you. The words fell from his lips with such raw, unvarnished truth that even the wind seemed to fall silent, breathless in anticipation. Lydia felt the world slip away. She had dreamed of hearing these words, but now that they hung in the air between them, she was terrified to believe. Do not say that, she whispered. If you will change your mind by dawn. Ball took her hands and pressed them firmly against his chest, right over his beating heart.
I have spent years living as though I felt nothing at all, he said, his eyes burning into hers. But since you entered my life, I have learned that love does not make a person weak. It is the very thing that teaches a man how to fight.
She trembled. And if your world does not accept me? I care nothing for my lands or my name. If I cannot share them with you, they are worth nothing. I will not abandon my world for your sake. I will reshape it so that there is a place within it for you. Tears began to spill down Lydia's cheeks. You do not know what you are saying. I know it better than I have ever known anything, he whispered. I have endured everything life has thrown at me, but I would never survive losing you. That night, Lydia's mother took a turn for the worse. Ball remained by their side throughout the ordeal, assisting in every way he could. He did not sleep. He tended the hearth, gathered medicinal herbs, and kept a tireless watch.
when the woman stirred for a fleeting moment. She looked at him with a faint, knowing smile. "So, you are the man my daughter speaks of, even when she says nothing at all." Ball bowed his head in a gesture of profound respect. "And you are the mother who raised the bravest woman I have ever known." The old woman nodded with weary tenderness. "Do not make her weep, boy. She has already shed enough tears for a lifetime." "I promise," he vowed.
It was the last time she ever spoke. When the first light of dawn crept through the window the following morning, Lydia's mother had already slipped into the final silence, leaving behind a look of profound, serene peace. Lydia collapsed, and Ball caught her, pulling her close and holding her fast within his arms. He wept with her in the stillness, neither of them speaking a word. For in moments such as these, love has no need for speech. It only needs to be present. Days bled into weeks, and though the mourning period was heavy, Lydia eventually found her way back to a smile. It was not that her sorrow had vanished, but rather that she had learned how to carry it. Ball never left her side. He had sent word to his counselor, instructing him to return to the city and govern in his stead. He had, at long last, made his choice. He stayed, helping Lydia tend the hearth, mending the roof of her cottage, and working alongside her to ensure she could forge ahead. One afternoon, as they kneaded flour together, she looked up at him and said, in a voice barely above a whisper, "Why are you still here, Ball? You could be in your palace, surrounded by every luxury, living a life of ease." "Because my life is exactly where you are," he replied, without a moment's hesitation. Lydia looked at him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. She reached out, gripping his large, flour-dusted hands, and squeezed them tight. "I have always feared your love was merely an illusion, a passing whim. But today, I have no more fear." Ball smiled, tenderly wiping a stray tear from her cheek with his thumb. "That means I love you, and I have no desire to fight against what I feel any longer." He pulled her into a fierce embrace, holding her like a man who had finally found his home after a long and treacherous journey. And there, amidst the scent of fresh-baked bread and the soft whisper of the wind, they sealed their love with a kiss full of promise. Weeks later, Ball brought Lydia to the city and to the gates of his castle. As she stepped through the grand archways, the servants fell into a heavy, expectant silence. Not a soul dared to utter a word. The nobles of the court, however, were not so restrained. They watched with narrowed eyes, whispering amongst themselves like vipers in the grass. Ball dismounted and took Lydia's hand. His voice rang out, steady and commanding, echoing through the great hall. "This is Lydia. From this day forward, this is her kingdom too." For a heartbeat, no one moved. The air hung thick with tension, until Gothian, who had governed in Ball's stead, stepped forward. He knelt on the stone floor and spoke clearly. "Welcome, Mutsera." The servants followed suit, dropping to their knees in unison. The court nobles, though clearly unsettled, bowed their heads in begrudging acknowledgement. And so, amidst a mixture of genuine reverence and cold disapproval, the baker girl, who had once arrived in the rain, soaked to the bone and clinging to an old, broken cart, at last became a queen. As time flowed onward, the fields flourished as they never had before. Lydia brought a newfound warmth to the castle,
And in time, she bore Baal an heir, a son they named Anan. The common folk and the servants greeted her with genuine affection whenever she walked the streets, though the nobles continued to watch her from the shadows of the castle corridors with lingering suspicion. One golden evening, as the sky ignited in brilliant shades of orange and amber, Lydia stepped toward Baal. She leaned in, resting her head gently against his shoulder.
Do you remember when you told me that love taught you how to fight?
I do, he replied, his hand moving to gently stroke her hair. Why do you ask? Because I have learned as well. I have learned that love is not a luxury. It is a choice we make every single day. And choosing to be yours has been the bravest decision of my life. Baal looked down at her, his gaze softened by a profound tenderness. And for me, it was finding you when I least expected it. Lydia smiled, her eyes drifting toward the quiet of the room, to the cradle where little Anan slept. The wind sighed softly, lifting a fine mist of golden dust into the air. In the distance, the sun began its slow descent behind the horizon. As they looked at one another, their hearts understood a singular truth. Some loves may be born of destiny, but true love is the kind that survives it. Yet fate had other plans for that very night. Plans that would bring forth blood, tears, and a new trial for their love. But that is a story for another time.
Rosis horas, rosis form, selen fira vai imod, avas nira, avas tal, vai sora vira sal, Israelis duna, Israelis nov, luven solas,